You're listening to The Startup with Monique LeRae, only on LA Talk Radio.
How's it going, Los Angeles? This is The Startup with Monique LeRae. I'm Monique LeRae. I made it back to the West Coast. Thank you so much for tuning in today on The Startup. I threw this together in celebration of Halloween. I don't know what I am. I'm giving you maybe some Addams Family with some scariness on the side. I literally just came from the airport. I don't have my costume yet, but tomorrow I will be in full Halloween celebration. You guys, if you know me or follow my shows, I love Halloween, so everything's kind of crooked, but thank you for joining me on this pre-Halloween show. I have a power-packed show, lots of topics to cover. People from around the globe are on my show today. I'm really, I'm very honored that people have tuned in and are signing up on a Sunday to be here. So thank you so much to everyone that's on the show today. And the first gentleman I want to introduce is Patrick Brennan out of Chicago. I think we can still see the skyline behind you, Patrick. How's it going?
It's well. I'm well. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on the show and, signing up for this. Is this your first podcast ever, or tell us what's
it
going
is.
on.
Some people save the best for last. I said, why not start with the best out of the gate?
Oh my goodness. I'm flattered. Thank you so much. And, full disclosure, Patrick and I are working on a few projects, and they are feel-good projects that are really going to bring health and help and awareness and just more love into the world. We'll deep dive that in another time. But I think today we should go ahead and just intro you. And what are you wearing today for your pre-Halloween last minute costume?
So I am in real life. I'm Sean Brennan's dad, and Sean had a gala last night that he attended with his mom and his sisters, and he was rocking a black shirt and blue paisley tuxedo. So I'm doing my best imitation of Sean Brennan today.
I love that. Shout out to Sean Brennan. Absolutely. Let me just do this again. Shout out to Sean Brennan. All right. So let's go ahead and just do a full intro of who you are, what you do, why you're here with us on The Startup. Give us a little background about who you are.
Sure. So I mentioned my son, Sean. First and foremost, I'm a dad. I have Sean and two daughters, and they are the core of who I am. So I'm a dad. My whole life I've been a dad. My first daughter in 2004 officially made me a dad, and for the rest of my life I will be. I'm also a transactional attorney in Chicago. So for people who aren't well-versed in the legal world, attorneys are broken into two segments, essentially. There's litigation attorneys who go to court, and probably are the version of attorneys that are most often portrayed on TV. My practice is a little bit different than that, actually a lot different than that.
Yeah.
And it's more of the quote unquote corporate type attorney. So I do transactional work, which is I do business deals. I advise my clients. I understand their needs, their goals, their objectives. And then I work with the party and their attorneys on another side. I understand their goals, their objectives, their priorities. And then through that understanding and negotiation, ideally and often, we put deals together. So it's different than the adversarial, we're going to fight to the death in litigation that maybe a lot of people think of when they think of what lawyers do.
I'm glad you're actually breaking that down because, for the novice who just watches Law and Order or some of these shows, even though I know that that's very heavily pulled from real things and, experiences. But yeah, thanks for kind of shedding a light on that. So you actually help people get in and out of real estate. Is that kind of the focus, or?
My focus is in real estate. Yeah. So a lot of my clients, have their business touches on real estate in one way or the other. A lot of them are investors who buy or sell real estate, or they might finance real estate or lease real estate. But yeah, so my particular, well, I think of myself as a transactional lawyer generally. Most of my practice involves some aspect of real estate.
And I think we've had some conversations where it kind of makes sense to me getting to know you, and as the listeners and viewers will see more often on the show, I think they'll get to know you too. Some of your background helping people who were a little less fortunate find housing, and it's kind of like a full circle moment here that you find yourself in this career.
When I was in college, I volunteered at the Center for the Homeless in South Bend, Indiana. I went to the University of Notre Dame, and the Center for the Homeless is down the street, and the university and some of the other community partners were and continue to be big supporters of the Center for the Homeless. And I worked my first 3 years out of college. I worked at the Center for the Homeless, and we don't have time on your segment to talk about all of the things that I learned when I was there, but I got to know people in a really as a young as a young student, as a young man right out of college. Certainly the goal was to provide services to people who didn't have a home, and there was a whole continuum of care and a broad-based curriculum that was designed to bring people who were on the streets or were in a place of instability and help move them toward stability in their lives, and particularly in their housing. Yeah. But really what I ended up learning, it was a crash course on humanity. And I really developed a lot of intimate connections with people who were on the margins of our society, but had every bit of the goals and dreams and the intimate family and personal connections that all of us seek out of life.
Yeah.
And I really got to know people in a deep way at a young age. I was a man, but a young man. It was a very interesting, enlightening, and humbling experience.
Wow. And I can't help but, we've been talking about serendipity and things kind of falling in alignment and all of that. And, meeting you here in Laguna, you guys, I met Patrick here and we had some conversations, about everything. And I tell you, Matt, you guys, if you haven't been to Laguna, even though we're LA Talk Radio, we cover all of Southern California. Laguna is a magical place. Patrick, briefly tell us how you found me and LA Talk Radio and your colleague and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me because some of the conversations that you and I have had, deal with trauma and tragedy. But I've mentioned to you that one of the things I want to do, among just trauma and tragedy and the sadness and struggles in people's lives, but is tell a beautiful story. A quote. There's a quote from Dostoevsky's novel *The Idiot* that says, "Beauty will save the world." And you and I have talked a lot about that. And when I was in my firm's office in Newport Beach, one of my friends and colleagues said, "What are you going to do tonight?" I think it was a Monday night.
Yeah.
And I said, "I'm not really sure. I'm just here to work and don't really have any other plans." She said, "You got to go to Laguna Beach and the rooftop of the hotel." Remind me of the name.
La Casa del Camino. Shout out. They're one of my sponsors on the show. Yeah.
There we go. She said, "It's the most beautiful sunset in Southern California." And so I said, "Well, all right, I'm heading there."
Yeah.
And, I walked to I found the place, and I walked, it was well attended, and there was one seat open actually. And I saw you at the corner of the bar, and I said, "Is anyone sitting there?" And you said, "You are."
Yeah.
And it was I wasn't even looking for beauty at the time, but obviously we enjoyed a beautiful sunset that evening.
Yeah.
And the conversations that you and I have had have been not always easy, but often important. And my goal would be that, particularly, I've dealt with some personal and family struggles and tragedy. Mm-hmm. And the goal is certainly to connect with people where they are.
Yeah.
But if I've learned anything over the course of the time that we've been talking and that I've been living, is that there's always beauty to be found. And the fact that I was that I thought that I was going to see a beautiful sunset, and you and I have connected and been able to have some beautiful conversations, and would like to continue doing that, is, as you said, quite serendipitous.
I love it. And thank you. I feel equally as blessed meeting your partner, Alex, meeting some of your family members, seeing where you come from and what you're building, and hearing, about your vision for Pillar of Love, because this is the startup. So we want to talk about startup businesses. This is a nonprofit that Patrick and his partner are launching. So why don't you tell people what Pillar of Love is, how you came up with the concept, and go as deep or, as it, however much you want to share about how you decided to do this. Because I know a lot of people launch things from sometimes a time of need or change. I know that I've launched things from that space. Why don't you share what that is?
Absolutely. So I was married for 18 years, and I have 3 children, as I mentioned. And my ex-wife, for much of our marriage, struggled. We've now been mired in a 2.5-year separation and divorce struggle that has been very high conflict, very painful, very destructive, very traumatic, particularly for our 3 kids.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. And I am too. And one of the things is that one of the turning points for me personally has been to rediscover the beauty that existed in our marriage. And sometimes when something ends, the tendency is to think that all is lost. And the reason that we're talking about Pillar of Love is at the depth of my own despair and the challenge of divorce and high conflict divorce, which I don't think we have enough time today to go into the details, but
actually my other guest canceled, so we'll keep you on till 4:30.
Okay, so you tell me when to shut up, but
no, we want to hear from you, Patrick.
High conflict divorce is a cancer on our society. It's a cancer on our families. We all know the tragedy that cancer can take, the toll that cancer can take on healthy people, healthy families.
Yeah.
In my experience, high conflict divorce has the potential to destroy healthy people and destroy healthy relationships. And I, going into my separation and divorce, I did everything I could to avoid that conflict.
Sure.
And my ex-wife and I worked together to do that.
Good.
And yes, good. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful. And so now we are mired in a situation that I don't think serves anyone well.
Right.
And so one of the, and I get caught up in that as much as a lot of fear sets in.
Mm-hmm.
Fear for my children, fear for their future, fear of failing them. And, there may be parents in your audience who have experienced the toll that a high conflict divorce takes on their children and on themselves and on their relationships with their children. And when going into the divorce, I mentioned my ex-wife and I, we tried to make it amicable, and I never wanted to fight. People would always, as things were going south, people would say to me, "You have to fight for your children." And I said, my kids don't want me to fight their mom.
I admired that stance, by the way, not to cut you off, but very often there's this ideology, or I guess the way they do business in the family law system, and I'm not an expert, I'm just outside looking in, that there's got to be a good and a bad guy. And having a functioning, resolve for everybody, it seems like that's not what the system is interested in, but I could be wrong. But I like that you're countering it with love, and Something positive.
Yeah. So just to touch that point, because I mentioned at the outset that I'm a transactional lawyer, and so my experience my professional experience
Yes.
is in my experience as a professional, as a lawyer, the legal system works. The legal system is designed to be self-regulating, meaning that
Okay.
there's a set of professional rules that exist that lawyers abide by. And
Okay.
in my experience, lawyers take those rules seriously and abide by them. And even if we didn't, our professional clients wouldn't tolerate it if we didn't.
Right.
So as a professional, the legal system works, and it works very well.
That's good to hear these days. I got to tell you, because there's a lot going on in all directions. So that's kind of comforting, right, listeners? I mean, especially people starting businesses. That
absolutely, no question. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business person,
Yeah.
looking for a lawyer, your lawyer should understand your business. Your lawyer should have high standards of ethics, high standards of professionalism, and should know you and your business. And to the extent they don't, they should be willing to understand it. And those lawyers are out there. I mean, there's I like to think I provide good value and good service to my clients. As a professional, though, in the context in which I serve, I'm a dime a dozen. There are all kinds of very professional, highly ethical, highly effective lawyers out there throughout this country in the corporate context. And I even have a friend who does litigation. He does litigation nationally for corporate clients. And I was talking to him about my experience in the family law system, and he said, he's like, the whole system is built on people telling the truth. And in the corporate context, you have professionals who don't typically people don't lie. And even if you have somebody who represents a business, who's a representative of business, who's going to lie, their lawyers aren't going to let them.
Yeah.
What I have found in my personal experience in the family courts, and what I found in my research and connection with people around the country, too often the family courts are subject to operating very differently than the legal system is designed to operate.
Wow. Is that because there's other agencies that depend on that, like child services and therapy? They make a revenue from keeping families kind of on a loop. Now, that's just me being a little cynical, and I apologize in advance if that's wrong. But
I think there's a lot of money to be made off of the backs of families that are in conflict. So if you're a family law practitioner, like some of the ones that I have encountered, not all of them, but there are family law practitioners, for example, my ex-wife's lawyer, who I believe wants families to be in conflict so that they can charge more money. Then lawyers on the other side have to deal with that conflict. The family law system is a $60 to $80 billion betwess. And there absolutely are lawyers who betray their professional ethics, who betray their families, betray their clients, and betray the children involved, most importantly and most tragically, in order to create conflict, in order to churn more legal fees.
That's heartbreaking, you guys. I mean, listen, it's Halloween, and if that's scary enough, this is even scarier than Halloween right now. And I'm trying to make a fun little joke, but it's not funny. I don't know what to say, because on one hand, it's shocking to hear, right? Because you hear people say families are first, and they're the cornerstone of society. You hear people saying that, that's important. And then to see a system doing that, but you haven't been the first person to bring this to my attention, or the last. You're just the first person I know who's launching a nonprofit within the 2 months I've known you, getting your hands dirty and putting your money where your mouth is and actually hustling. So, kudos to you. And we have 9 minutes left. I want to know what your vision is for Pillar of Love, and how did you choose the high road to handle this?
So I'm not the first person, as you mentioned, I'm not the first person to go through this. There's an estimate that 22 million parents are on the other end of parental alienating behaviors. There's an estimate that 4,000 children per day lose contact with their parents through the family law system.
Oh, wow.
I certainly have a story to tell, but there's also anybody who's interested in, to the extent that my story can be told. There's a book that I read recently, The Respondent, Exposing the Family Law Cartel, written by somebody who's become a friend of mine and has started a charity designed to address this issue that's plaguing our system. So anybody who, I know that there are people in your audience who my story resonates with. Sure. And, so Greg Ellis is the author. I've talked to some of my friends. My cousin has gone through a 12-year custody battle. And he and I have unfortunately too much to talk about. Some of my friends who are loving fathers who are married and have not, fortunately not gone through divorce or any kind of the family drama that I have read Greg's book, and it's touched them as well, because unless you go through this experience, and lawyers that I talk to, you can't imagine. Most lawyers would not imagine the deficiencies that exist in the family law system.
From what you started off saying with your practice and how you said that the system actually works. And from those numbers, definitely someone is in my audience knows someone, if not them, who's gone through this. And, we're going to have you back because I don't want to cut you off, but let's round this out.
I do want to, I do want to finish about just, no, I don't mean to cut you off, because I think it's part of what you asked me as well, in terms of my transformation into Pillar of Love. Because if there is one person in your audience who this story resonates with at all, I would like to offer to them my personal experience. I talked about serving as a pillow of love when I was married and when I was with my family. I offered that to my wife. I offered it to my kids. And one of the things that is one of the risks of the adversarial divorce system is a parent who might want to disrupt the relationship between kids and their other parents.
To leverage them or to use them,
frankly, to weaponize them. Yes.
Okay.
They may disrupt they may attempt to disrupt your relationship with your kids, to erase you from their lives, to erase your identity. And I mentioned to you that I tried to maintain an amicable process, but it didn't work. We didn't succeed. And then you get into this, the only idea is, well, I'm a father, I'm a parent, I have to protect my kids, I have to be there, I have to be present to them. Maybe I need to fight. And then you get caught up as a participant in this destructive and broken system. And my experience in engaging with the system is not only were my kids stolen from me and was potentially my identity or my role as a father, which is a critical and essential element of my identity, erased, but I became a willing participant in erasing myself, right? The fear set in, the desperation set in terms of protecting my kids and trying to get this system that is broken and destructive to listen to me and say, look, here's a perspective that I offer. Here's a role that I offer that has value and that is important. And I believe there are probably people in your audience, unfortunately, who can resonate with what I'm saying. And so I want to tell you the response that worked for me and why. I talked about the story of being a pillow of love. There were all kinds of conversations being had, stories being told by my ex-wife and her lawyer and the family law system. It's just a complete work of fiction. And I got to the point where I realized that that this story that's being told in this courtroom or in these pleadings isn't even my story. It's not even the story of my family. And, you know, frankly, reaching out to you was helpful in me to put a voice to that. But I got to the point where I said, you know what? I am very sad and concerned about the circumstances that my family is in and my kids are in. And I still feel sad for my ex-wife, but I can't seem to affect the narrative in the family law system, but I need to tell my own story. And in starting to have those conversations, I rediscovered and reclaimed my voice as a loving and committed father. And I said, I'm not married anymore, and I can't play that role. I can't be that pillow of love that I was for my family when we were all living in the same house. But I'm still a pillar of love. I'm still the same man. I'm still the same loving father, and I'm still the same loving ex-husband and co-parent, even though it's not the same role. I still offer the same protection and guidance and support to my family that I ever did. And so if I could talk to any father or mother who has been alienated from their kids, or who they and their children have been the victims of a high conflict divorce, I would tell you, we talked about my expertise. I am a lawyer, but I'm a loving father. And there are people in your audience, I believe, most likely, if the percentages are correct, there are loving fathers and loving mothers in your audience who, through the broken adversarial divorce system, have been disconnected from their children and perhaps have focused on that loss, and in the process maybe lost their own expertise as a loving mother and a loving father. And if I could offer them one word of encouragement, it would be to reclaim, rediscover, reclaim, and hold on to, above all else, your personal expertise as your child's loving mother and loving father, and let that be your guide. And I wish there was an easy button that I could push and say that that's going to make everything else better, and it won't. But you're not as alone as you think you are.
Wow.
And you're more powerful than you think you are. And there are unfortunately millions of us out here who understand your experience. And I believe that if we're going to make any progress, it is through those of us who are reclaiming our expertise as loving fathers and loving mothers, and working through connections in our society to strengthen the fabric of our society as support, and ultimately as a voice that holds up a mirror to the family law system and says, you are not living up to the values and the role that our society demands.
I mean, well said. I feel like we were in the courtroom. You just litigated the case for mothers and fathers. And you guys, we're going to have Patrick on. This is just the beginning, because he's got so many cool things to catch you up on. Some stuff still top secret. We're not letting the cat out of the bag yet with some stuff, but he's going to be here this weekend with his partner, Alex, and they are going to be at Casa LA. Thank you for your sponsorship with the Wine and Art event and launching Pillar of Love this weekend here. And if people want to reach you, can you give them your Instagram and your email, or however you want them to contact? You got 10 seconds. Sorry, Patrick.
Pillar of Love Media at gmail.com.
Thank you for being here. I will see you really soon.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Happy Halloween, by the way.
You too. You look fantastic.
Thanks, Patrick. So do you, as your son, I
did the best Sean Brennan I could. So.
Well, shout out to Sean Brennan and your whole family, and thank you again for opening your heart. And he'll be back, you guys. We're going to give him the whole show very soon. See you soon, Patrick. Thank you. All right, you guys. That was Patrick Brennan with Pillar of Love, a very heartfelt story, and a lot of times when you start a business, you have a backstory. His is really, really personal and family based, and some startup stories start that way. So you'll be seeing and hearing more from him, and I'm glad he was able to share some of that. All right, Sam, do we have Dee waiting there? We've got some other fun stuff going on today on the show. Let's see. Oh, we don't see her. Okay. Well, hopefully she'll get back on. We had a little surprise for you guys, a little giveaway opportunity, all the way from Europe. So I know that the time zones and things are, can be a little challenging, and maybe the Wi-Fi, I don't know, but hopefully she'll sign back in. So Dee, if you're there, we are ready for you. Sign back in. Guys, if you're not following my show on Instagram, check us out on Instagram. It's at The Startup with Monique LeRae. You can also check me out on my personal, at Monique LeRae Stinson. And it's spelled MoniqueLoreStinson, and at Capaquarius Media as well. And we're featuring a lot of great things. Coming up, we've got, like I said, this fun. Well, it's a surprise, so I don't want to ruin it yet in case she gets back on. Let me reach out to her and see if she can sign back on. But at any rate, you guys, I had the most amazing last 2 days in Maryland. If you follow my personal social media, you would see I met just someone. I mean, you guys know her, Iyanla Van Zant. She's just one of a kind, and I finally met her, in person and interviewed her for you guys. So I'm writing an article about some of the things she gave us, firsthand tips for startups, and so did Angela Yee from the Breakfast Club, from the radio show, The Breakfast Club. So shout out to Miss Iyanla Van Zant. Thank you for your wisdom, your time, and letting me be in the same room as you. I mean, you guys, she's a force, and so is Angela Yee. She's, doing everything in all spaces, and she's got some great tips too. All right. It looks like Catherine's back. Catherine, are you here, darling?
Hello, I am. Hello.
Hello, Catherine. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I'm sorry. We, I guess we had a little glitch there, but we're glad you're here. And why don't you introduce, by the way, I don't know if you saw the first segment, but this is kind of my pregame for Halloween. So
oh, nice.
We're doing a little Addams Family. I don't know how that go. So why don't you introduce yourself to the viewers and listeners here on LA Talk Radio?
So I'm Catherine Matisky, and I'm coming to you from Melbourne in Australia. And if I'd known that it was the Halloween dress up, then I would have done something, but I didn't.
Oh, it's fine. We're still being professional and talking about certain subjects. So just a little flair, and you're already a day ahead of us. So how was the celebration there?
Well, it's still happening, so don't worry about it. It's
okay, good.
It's happening. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. So you guys, this was the surprise I wanted to give you. Catherine's publicist, Catherine, reached out to me, and thank goodness, I know it's very late and early and the time zones are crazy, but you have something really special to share with the viewers and listeners. So Catherine, go ahead and introduce your brand and what you're doing to my audience, please.
So I'm a learning scientist, a learning and development professional. And one of the things that's annoyed me for my entire career of 30 years, because I'm ancient, one of the things that annoyed me is that when people play email ping pong, going back and forth, I don't understand, and then they have meetings, and that's useless. Yeah. And this whole miscommunication and lack of communication, and I knew how to solve it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get to work on actually putting this together. And 12 months ago, I did that, and I wrote a book called Unlock Your Inner Genius. And that comes with a profile, and it's all based around how people learn, because how people learn is effectively how they connect with other people, how they communicate with other people, and ultimately how they influence other people.
Yes. Wonderful. And the reason why I say this is a surprise is because we don't realize the patterns as entrepreneurs, what we're doing with the ping pong. We're in it. So this is a real gift. It's a Halloween gift to my fellow startups and business owners, because sometimes we need someone to stop. And, Patrick was talking about holding a mirror up to a system. You're holding up a mirror to our system and our habits that are not serving us. And you don't get your time back in business. You really, tell us more.
Well, you don't. And the thing is that we're all doing what we're doing. And so when you start a new business, as I did, my business is 29 years ago I started. And 29 years ago, all I needed to do was to pay my rent and to survive. That's what my whole mission back then was, to do that. I had no business plan. I had no idea. And I was a computer software trainer in Microsoft. I was doing what I was doing. So I was the subject matter expert in what I was doing. I managed to get some work, and that was great. And that's how a lot of entrepreneurs start. They are the expert in what they're doing, and they just go out there and go, I'm going to start a business. And then they start marketing and it falls flat, or they hire staff and there's tension. And all of these things, it's because they're just doing them. They're just, they do themselves, and not looking at what's needed to really balance out that communication for everybody who's not like them. Because people think that everyone's like them. Well, when you go into business, there's no surer shock in the world than to realize that actually everybody isn't like you.
That's true. That's very, very, I love that you pointed that out. And sometimes it's okay to go in and say, I just want to pay my rent. But as we know, things change in business, things change in life. And you're right, taking a macro view of the business, the people that you're taking care of on your business, yourself, your health, your time, all those things can go and play, as you update your game plan and you look to the next year or what your goals are for your business. But you guys, I want to point out about Miss Catherine here. Catherine, I'm going to brag on you a little bit here, okay, guys? She's a globally recognized business educator, innovator of Genius, Quotient, GQ, right? Did I say that right? And founder of and TPC, the performance company. So these are really strong words, and they stand out. Congratulations on being able to get those titles for your brand. And tell us more about these brands. The group think stinks. Don't hire people like yourself ever. I love that title.
Well, that's the thing, and that's really what I was talking about before, because what you want is you want a team around you, even if it's a virtual team in the beginning, or if it's contractors or whatever. You want a team around you that is not a duplicate of yourself. There is already one of you. You don't need 2 or 3 or 50. Just get people who are different, and that can feel difficult, but it is the absolute key, because everyone then brings their own inner genius to the party. And when you've got a group of people who are really different, like in my team, I've got people who are so different to me, it drives me insane. But without them, I can't run my business. So for me, my inner genius profile is called the futurist. So I'm all around the vision, dreaming up new ideas. Give me a blank Miro board and I'm off and I'm running. Okay. And I've got people on my team that detest that. Good, because they're the people that take my ideas and put a project plan together. They're the people that actually get into the detail. They're the people that'll do the numbers. They're the people that'll sort out my ideas and take them to market. Without them, I'd have to do it. Forget it. That's what I did in the beginning. And you can't, if you can stay in what I refer to as your genius zone, where you operate best, and keep every member of your team in their respective genius zones. When you put that together, you've got the synergy of that, and you become unstoppable, because you go, for me, I say, here's my next brilliant idea. Some of the people in my team go, oh, what is she talking about now? But that's okay. And then they go, oh, I get it. And then they put it together and then take it out. And so that's what I need. Without them, if I had a group of people just like me, and there's a few people on my team that are just like me, and we love working together because we all brainstorm new ideas and we come up with all this creative stuff and we love it. and then someone's got to do the doing. So that balance is so important.
You know, and this is the thing that stands out. In the very beginning, I was working one of my many jobs. My dad and I, when I was younger, I made a list of all the jobs I ever had. I mean, I worked from McDonald's to, your local grocery store, and, here we are. But from top to bottom, I remember people saying, maximize your strengths, minimize your weaknesses. And you're speaking to that, and you're saying it'd be great to have a lot of people that say yes to the same things or have the same vibe, but you're not going to really grow and you're not going to maximize your time because you're doing the same thing. And I love that pushback. And you're kind of actually creating in the production world, a think tank, I mean, that's really what it is, bouncing those ideas off. And what has been your largest gain, your biggest growth, would you say, from maybe one of those sessions with your team that was very noticeable? And I know that's hard because you probably had a lot. So
yeah, well, the thing is, I think one of the big things is that once you have a balanced team, you need to be able to know how to communicate with people who learn and communicate completely differently to you. So there is actually no use with me, with my futurist archetype, trying to talk in my futurist language, and it is a bit like a language, to someone who's different to me. They might be there's 12 archetypes in Inner Genius. They might be the horologist or the scribe or the cartographer. All of those archetypes are very detailed and they're not like me. If I talk in my futurist language to them, they just look at me like, what on earth is she talking about? So what I have to do is talk in their language. As soon as I can speak in their language, a bit like me speaking Spanish and them speaking French, I can speak Spanish all day long. They're not going to get it. But as soon as I start speaking French, they hook in. And so if I speak in their language of the scribe or the cartographer or the horologist, they go, oh, I get it.
Okay.
And that's called the translation tool. And I've done all the work for people. I've worked out what is the language you need to speak, what are the words you need to say, how do you say it, how do you structure your communication, all of that I've dished up on a beautiful silver platter to people, because it's not just about saying this is interesting, because people go, how do I do that? So I say, here's the toolkit to do it. Go and fill out this template and you'll be able to create this communication, or here's some pointers that you can use. And that's actually behind me on this side here. See that poster up there framed? That's the archetype translator tool. So that helps people to really translate between their natural language and someone who's different to them.
Do you have a psychology background? I didn't see that in your bio.
I don't, but I've spent my whole career in learning and development. And so my entire career, my participants, my thousands of participants that have been on my training courses, and I work in large corporate in the US and in Europe. I do very little work in Australia. And so that has been my grounding in this entire learning science piece, to say how people learn is how they relate to others and how they communicate to other people. That's my angle where I'm coming from.
I see a lot of profits to be saved, time and energy to be saved for executives. You probably already have that. You probably have that stat somewhere on that board over there, I'm sure, or on your breakdown. So, we have about another minute here. What's the sale for businesses that are growing, scaling into 2023, that are coming out of their startup stage, that are looking to get ahead of hiring a team and implementing something like your system in place? How can they find you and what could they look forward to?
So first things first is either look me up on LinkedIn, just go to my profile on LinkedIn and send me a direct message and I'll help you out. The second thing is, if you go to thegeniusquotient.com, then that's the website where you can do your profile and get your team to do their profile. And then what we can do with you is do a team map of who's who on which archetype, and then help you to say, okay, how can I really get the best out of these people? Because it's so hard keeping people and engaging them in your team. That's the real key these days. Is hiring is one thing, retaining is another. And how can you really get that energy up in your team?
Beautiful. And I think you're really onto something. post-pandemic in our endemic stage here. We're going to talk offline more because I know that I think I mentioned it in the email, but I'm working on the third installation for my pandemic documentary, and we're cause and effects of that with the quiet quitting and all of this stuff. So I love what you're doing. Thank you for making things more efficient. The genius is the way, and you're a genius, and just beautiful continued success to you, Catherine. Thank you so much for getting on our time zone today and sharing.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. And so you're going to be back. We're going to have you back. All right, guys, that was Catherine, and all the way from Melbourne. So thank you so much. Sam, text to me there if you see our other friend from overseas. We have one more. I think she might be having a technical issue, which happens, guys, you know. So excited about the future, you guys. Our shows are packed. This is my last show until I leave. What am I saying? You guys are going to see a live show for a whole 4 weeks. Oh my gosh. December 4th will be our next live show, and that will be the day of our drag brunch with Matt Sarafa. Okay. That's all, folks. This is my little Addams Family, whatever I threw in together. I just, like I said, just came from the airport. So again, shout out to Smith Publicity and Janet and Joelle and their team. Thank you so much I was at the Black Wealth Summit in College Park, Maryland this week, Friday, Saturday, and yesterday. So yesterday was Saturday, Friday and Saturday. It actually was a 3-day thing. I couldn't get there Thursday, but it was 3 days, October 27th through the 29th. Damon John from the Shark Tank was there. I didn't get to see him, but I did get to meet Miss Iana Van Zant, and that was a life-changing experience. So was speaking with Angela Yee. She's quite smart and has a lot of information for startups that she shared with me in an exclusive interview. So I'll be dropping that article and sharing some of those notes with you guys via social media. So follow me at Monique LeRae Stinson, at the Startup with Monique LeRae, or at Capricorns Media. I'll post it on all the platforms. It's kind of hard to post an article on Instagram, so follow me on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn or somewhere else, okay? But I won't see you guys. Sam, I'm not going to see you for a whole month. Are you going to miss me? All right. Sam's our show owner and LA Talk Radio producer, by the way, guys, if you don't know that. And he keeps things going. Oh, he said, of course. Oh, too bad you can't come on, Sam. You know, you have a show. You should come on real quick and let people see you. I don't know if you're dressed, though. Okay. All right. Well, thank you to everyone that came on today. I know it's pre-Halloween. It's a weekend. Time zones and technology, TNT. But thank you for everyone that did come on and share. And for my sponsors, thank you so much, La Casa del Camino here in Laguna Beach. Shout out to the team there. Thank you to Michael Solberg Family Wines. And this weekend will be Casa LA, the wine and art event. And, you know, my wine associate, Marty, will be there pouring it up, Marty's Party. So go see him, help some underprivileged kids, some court-appointed youth, get the things they need. Patrick and his partner, Alex, will be out here. That'll be wonderful. I'll be on a plane again, but I'll be with you guys in spirit. And I will be back live in 4 weeks, okay? So email me if you've got a story for these areas. We're going to Europe and Africa. CapAquariusMedia@gmail.com. And I'm so sad I'm not going to see you guys for 4 weeks, but that's okay. You've got work to do. What will you start up today? See you in a month live. Enjoy the rerun.
You're listening to The Startup with Monique LeRae, only on LA Talk Radio.